live, y'all.
Oh,
We live.
oh, wait, I was like,
Hey,
oh,
y'all.
I was pulling out the.
That's okay because you're cute.
Hey.
Right.
Right, so you gotta give us a warning, Darlene.
3, 2, 1,
Okay.
and we live, y'all.
But look.
Hey, y'all.
But look. So I'm
Welcome
driving,
to
so I'm
Lucid
going
Underground.
down the street. It's a green line.
We are talking about education and the system.
There's a green line on the
And is education beneficial to our youth?
left. And out the window, out the side.
Meet my guests, Tori, Nidra, Tasha, and MJ over here in the corner.
Working. I'm like,
Tori is having his own conversation. Let's get into the Chicago public school system.
get into
Let's
it.
get into the school system in
I'm a
general.
Let's
product
get
of
into the
Chicago
school
public schools.
systems in general.
Yes,
High school anyway. Not
Yeah.
grammar school.
I have the same here.
Do y'all believe that the school systems in Chicago first
Okay.
are beneficial to our youth or just as beneficial as schools on the outside in suburbs? Do you believe we get the same resources, the same treatment, the
Right.
same guidelines? Because
Can you hear me? Is this on?
I can hear you.
Okay.
So I know a young child that was in the Chicago public school system. At third grade, the parents recognized a delayment in the child. The parents suggested to the school that they test the child. The school didn't readily agree to test the child and said the child was fine. The child was okay. So the parent, because we know when something is wrong, so the parent listened to the school and believed what the school said. So the child goes to fourth grade. The fourth grade teacher notices a delay and says that she needs to hold the child back a year. Is that fair to the parent to have to hold a child back because the initial teachers failed the student? So fast forward, the child is held back, and instead of going to sixth grade, they had to repeat the fifth grade. The parent requested an evaluation. The school still declined the evaluation. The parent hired an outside white attorney that assisted with getting the school to comply with the standardized testing for an IEP. The school ended up testing the child, and it turned out that the child has some learning disabilities that were preventing them academically. So the school system failed the child. And if you are a parent that maybe have trouble recognizing those signs, and the school seem to be not really concerned about whether or not a child is succeeding academically. You have one teacher teaching 30 to 40 students the same exact way, which tells me
problem.
that you
Yeah,
think
that's the problem.
each child is the same,
That's the problem, right there.
and
That's
it's
the
and they're
problem right
learning the
there.
same.
Yep.
So, do we think or do we believe that the school system is really helping our children be successful as adults?
So I'm not, my child isn't in Chicago Public Schools, so I can't really speak to a lot of Chicago Public Schools curriculum. However, I can speak to different parents whose children that I know are in Chicago Public School systems. I like to think that, first I'd like to commend this mom. You always have to be an advocate for your children's education. So kudos to the mom for learning or understanding that, hey, that there's something else that's different that I see, because some parents may just continue to allow their child to just go through the system. I want to believe, because I do know educators who are passionate about what they do, and they are part of the Chicago public school system. So I have to look at it from a holistic view. Is it the teachers, or like you said, is it the system? Because I think that sometimes we may place the onus onto the educator, but it may be the whole overall system that is set up and designed for our children to not be successful, for them to be counted as a number. Because systematically, Black American children, and living in the areas that we live in, the educational school systems aren't always the greatest. So they don't put the funding and the money into the school systems, and they don't put the funding where it needs to be allocated, and as a result, our children suffer the consequences from it. A lot of times they don't even make you aware of the different programs, because they're just going to pass the kids through, because no one wants to put forth that effort. If they already feel like the children are living in an impoverished area and that they're already set up for failure, they're not going to put into those type of schools, or the schools in those areas and things like that. So that's just my take on it. Again, I'm not too familiar with the Chicago public school system and the curriculum and how it works. I just know the things that I see, and just the things that I hear from other educators and parents whose children are in those schools, and people that I know who just work for the school system.
So, as a student of Chicago Public Schools, I would like to hear you still. But is it so? The only really is it a difference between
I don't know if that microphone works.
This one does.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Is there a difference between?
charter and public schools?
I don't know for sure now, and I can't speak too much on it. But I do know it depends on your area too, the neighborhoods that you're in. Because a lot of schools up north, they have the
They got
resources.
big, yeah.
So why do the schools up north have the resources, but the schools out west and on the south side don't? What is
Sorry, because it's not an impoverished area.
Yeah.
I grew up in Inglewood.
But hold that thought. So it's not an impoverished area, but each student still has a dollar amount, the same dollar amount on their head that the schools or the students on the north side.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just thinking, absolutely.
And
So,
that's what we're being told.
so school and children, I mean, I'm just in awe. Because what are the school systems really teaching?
Well, you have to understand, we're black, and most of the kids on the north side, not all, but most, are not black.
And they have money.
That's where the difference is.
And they have maybe the aldermans up there that they're going to back and make sure, because in certain areas, and I don't even want to go here, but a lot of times, and it's been said throughout social media, that a lot of times we do a lot of marching, but we don't follow through with it, so nothing gets completed. In certain other areas, they may continue and they may fight and go through whatever they need to go through to make the changes. So it's a lot of different things. That's not always the case, but it's a lot of different factors. But I just really feel that they don't care. They don't invest in where we are like they would in another area. And that's just the way it has, and it's unfortunate, but that's just the way it has always been. The system, it wasn't designed for us to be successful. They did not think that we would succeed, and that is the reason why, and don't even get me started, but that is the reason why
Because-
we are where we're at now, because as much as they try to paint a picture that it's not about this and not about that, a lot of the times we are the ones who suffer the consequences from the actions. So
and no one takes accountability for the failure of our youth. Nobody thinks it's their fault. The teachers blaming it on the parents blaming it on the teachers. Everybody just getting a check, and the children are suffering. So I want to know from MJ, when you were at the Chicago public school that you were at before you transferred, how was your experience from going from Chicago public school to a charter school?
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm MJ.
Hey.
And yes, I will answer that question. So my freshman year of high school, I attended South Shore College Prep over East. And it's a really beautiful school. I really enjoyed my time there. I enjoyed my time because I was having a lot of fun, and I mean the rules there, it was really really lax, like in terms of what I was learning. Honestly, I probably couldn't even tell you because I wasn't in class. So, I mean, maybe to a lot of you all listening to this, that probably doesn't sound like me because, I mean, I seem like a super academic person, but when I went to South Shore, I was ditching class. I had C's and D's, and because I was just in an environment that didn't, like, motivate me or push me to care about my academics. And when I transferred to the charter school, it was a competitive environment, and I'm a super competitive individual, and so it challenged me to become invested in my academics because they cared about a rank there. And even though it was still a charter school and still filled with black and brown students, all of these black and brown students some of them cared about the rank that they had in the class, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. My rank is like 158 out of 190 because I just came from South Shore. And I had C's and D's, so I knew I had to get it up. And I feel like the charter school environment gave me a educational hub where I was surrounded by people who actually cared about their education and who were looking forward to going to college. Because when I was at South Shore, we didn't talk about college as freshmen. But even though a lot of people that went to South Shore, they did end up going to college, but I probably wouldn't have because I wasn't around the people at South Shore that were interested in going to college. So it's like when I transferred, yeah, it did make a difference because even if the curriculum isn't up to par, it matters like the mindset of the students that you're around too. That makes a difference in the school culture and like how your child might perform because maybe their friends might not care, so they ain't gonna care either. So yeah, that's what I say to that question.
Thank you for your voice. That was really I'm sure a lot of people need to hear that. Seriously, that was really good and really informative. And so, with the mindset that there is not a lot of care in the school system for our youth, why are we giving our youth homework then? And then expecting the youth to understand the homework, or sending the child home with homework and expecting the parent to understand. If the level of care is not there, what's the purpose of homework?
It's part of the curriculum. That's what I'm just saying. That's like what they have to do. Like if you ever look into homeschooling, it's a whole thing that you have to like step by step. It's a whole curriculum that has to be followed for an accredited degree for them to obtain
For the school itself,
Yeah.
not for the education of the child.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's what it is, because if you talk to a lot of these youth today, if you're not teaching them basic common sense skills and things like that, they have to learn that from us, because they're definitely not going to attain that. Like school is just to educate you about that particular lesson. But the lessons that I really think that we really need are life lessons. Those are the ones that are more applicable to you. Like I'm just going to say this and pass it over because I think somebody else wants to talk. But one of the things that I've always taught my daughter.
Keep talking. Let me go let Jamal in.
One of the things that I've always taught my daughter is that, yes, I want you academically to be successful, but I want her to be more of a well-rounded individual. So I need her to have a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and just collectively, you will get the the educational aspect of it through school, and what resonates with you will be what will stick. But I think that application and life experiences are what is really more so needed for our children to be successful in this world. Just my take on it. Was it me? Was it me, or could anybody not really hear over 8 Ball and them?
You couldn't hear what?
Over 8 Ball and them? I was really
Yeah, it was loud. Yes, I did. Yeah.
Oh, the music.
And
The
I
music.
knew,
Oh my
yeah,
God.
it's-
we were,
yeah.
I know that we're live, but I was like, all I kept
Yes.
hearing was, and you know, my ADHD. I be sitting there like, what?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. And it was like.
Where did we leave off at?
Okay, back to your question about the homework.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, as someone who was a teacher and a tutor.
What is that?
Oh, you on a phone?
Somebody on the phone. On your watch.
Glad y'all didn't say nothing y'all didn't want nobody to hear.
Right?
All right, excuse
like
the
that.
interruption. Yeah, as someone who was a tutor and taught, I think that one goal of assigning homework is for the students to learn about the concept outside of class, because class is only so long. And in order to because one thing I learned as a student and as a teacher is, in order to get an A or to keep an A, you have to do a lot of work outside of class. Like, you can't just go to class and think that you're gonna get a A. You have to go home and do homework. And as a teacher, you can't just expect to get everything out in a lesson that you have to get out. They have to go home and do homework to, like, really practice what they just learned or continue learning depending on what grade they're in. They're in high school, or if they're in college, they have to go home and continue learning. And if they're in middle school or in elementary school, they have to go home and continue practicing what they just learned, because the teacher can't do everything. So it's like the student has to go home and do their homework.
So, and I got that part. I have that, but I guess I didn't word the question right. If the children are in school and they aren't being taught, or they're not understanding, because there's 40 of them in a classroom. So if they're not understanding the actual lesson that's being taught, how are they expected to do the homework? Because the parents end up having to do the homework, and nowadays, I'm a parent, I don't know anything about what's being taught these days. So who is accountable for the homework if the child doesn't understand?
Well, wait, to answer that question, I'd have to take a very cynical view on the education system and believe that every single teacher in the schools aren't teaching the students. And I would just really hate to believe that. But I do know that some teachers do not care, and they will send their students home with a lot of stuff that they never taught. Maybe they are doing that. And so in that case, I don't know, because that's very lazy on the part of the teacher. And there's not much that, well, we can do something about that, get the teacher fired. That's when it comes up to the parent. Like, it's up to the parent to realize their student is coming home and telling them, like, hey, Mom, I'm not learning anything in class, or hey, Dad, I'm not learning anything in class. And it's up to the parent to use their urgent, like it's up to them to be an agent of change and try to go to the school and tell the principal, like, hey, this teacher, my child coming home and telling me this, I don't know what's going on in class. Then they take it from there. But in terms of, like, all teachers, I would hate to have that cynical view.
Well, not all teachers, but of course, we're just speaking in general. But you just made a valid point, and I just lost my train of thought.
About the parents?
Yeah, it was about, it'll come back to me. Yeah, no, let me think. I remember when incentives were being offered for parents to pick up their child's report card. I don't remember all the details, but I know the incentives was coming from Walgreens. There was either a Walgreens gift card being offered or something being offered to pick up your child's report card. Y'all don't remember that? I'm tweaking by myself.
It
Yeah,
could have
I don't
been
remember that.
school-based. It could have
Huh?
been something that the school have done within, because they will do stuff like that.
But why does a parent need motivation to pick up their child's report card?
Because they don't show up. When report card day, I'm sorry, but for our people,
Speak on it.
usually younger people other than myself, I'm in my 50s, but usually younger generation, they don't really show up like that. So they might need them.
Cause my dad, he in his 60s. Hold on now. And he ain't go to no report card pickup, so it ain't just young people. It ain't just young people, so don't put that on my generation, because I know some parents that show out for these students
Yeah.
in my generation. And I know a lot of old folks that ain't never been in a child that's my age report card. And so it ain't, hey.
Well,
So,
Right.
so but yeah, report card is very important though. Go pick up your child's report card, please.
so Jamal is here. Jamal, come on and wrap this popcorn real quick.
I'm not sure about that one. I know this one.
And then I want to hear your thoughts on the education of our youth.
Repping Enjoy Corn Gourmet Popcorn.
Hey, Jamal.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you for having me back.
Of course.
Also, Reasonable Ignorance Podcast.
Hey.
Okay, what's the question again?
So, you kind of late, but we were talking about a lot. Let me sum it up. We're talking about the school system, and if it is as beneficial as it portrays to be. You have one teacher in a class teaching 30 to 40 students. There's no way that 30 to 40 students learn the same, but they are expected to learn the same, and they are expected to process it the same. And if they don't understand the lesson, then they're the problem. So we're just trying to make sense of, one, the importance of the first day of school, because every child has a dollar amount on their head, no matter if you're a North Side student, a South Side student, or East Side student. That same dollar amount is on your head if you attend the first day of school.
Correct.
Why are the resources limited depending on where you go to school if the dollar amount for each child is the same?
That's a good question. That is a good question. Why are that's a loaded question too at the same time.
That's why I'm lucid.
Why you said why is a dollar amount? I mean,
So it just say each child, we just gonna throw out a number.
right.
Just say each child, it gets $1,000 if they, how do I say it? When you attend the first day of school, the dollar amount that each child gets goes to the school. If I'm okay. So if you missed the first day of school, if from my understanding, that dollar amount, you don't get it for that student, right? So each student has the same dollar amount, $3,000 on their head. Let's just throw out that number, right? Why does the North Side students, hypothetically speaking, have better resources than the South Side students if all students have a $3,000 number on their head? Where are the resources for the South Side students? Does anybody know?
I feel like there's resources there for the South Side student.
You think they just throwing away with it?
I mean, I think North Side does have what can we say, the economics more economics than the South Side and quite possibly the West Side. They pay they more attentive to what's going on with the PTA. Is that such a thing anymore?
Right, that's a good question. Does the PTA still exist? Never heard of it. since it,
The
You know,
north
in a
side
long
has
time.
the north. With the south side, it depends. It depends on that actual parent, and it depends on that actual family, but it also depends on that school. And a lot of these schools have been condensed. Am I correct? Over the years,
yes, and clothes.
since
And closed down, yeah.
since Emmanuel,
And closed down.
since Rams,
Yeah.
since Rams, when
Since
he was
his-
mayor, which causes a lot of problems because you do have children that on that first day who, whether regardless of whether it be K through 8 or or high school, some kids can't go in certain areas because of that condensing. So therefore, they're not going. But also it's also on the parent. I feel like it's. And I think I'm getting with the question that you asked. It is it's some racism that goes on with that too.
Yeah.
Did you all touch on that already?
Not yet.
Yeah, there's some racism that goes along with that between the north side and the south side. The racism and prejudice between the north side and south side, but it's also on us as a black delegation to, I guess try to rise above.
But who really cares enough to do that?
Yeah, we touched on
Who-
the marching and how we don't always follow through with it.
I mean, but what's happening with marching? What's happening with that? I mean,
that's
does
what-
that help the education?
No, but that's typically what happens. We will be so upset that we will.
We'll
organize
just start
protests.
marching. Okay.
Yeah, but there has to be. You can't just initiate it and not follow through with it. And so when we go off into these marches and we go off into these protests, are we prepared to ride this through? Like back in the day with the Selma, the bus boycott, that went on forever. Like they wasn't playing no games. So I forgot how many days it was shut down or how many days they boycotted the bus. However, we have a tendency to continue to start it, but we don't always follow through with it. And just imagine, it's been proven the things that we do follow through, the type of impact that we can make when we do that. So when it comes to what they put into their schools on the north side or on any other side where we are not heavily populated and they invest into those areas, it's because systematically, kind of like what I said earlier, systematically, they've always deemed us to be the ones that they didn't want to be successful. They didn't want us to succeed, so therefore they don't invest into where we are at. And that's just so unfortunate that decision is made unbeknownst to us. Yes, we are the ones that, deal with the consequences of it, and we know that these type of things happen behind closed doors. We are aware of that. We're not oblivious to it, but this is the reality that we're unfortunately living in.
So
I know she said something about marching. So we for a side note, or for example, my fraternity, which is Phi Beta Sigma, the world's greatest fraternity ever, on that first day, we adopted a school called Tanner. Tanner School, which is on 85th. What's the 2 blocks past Cottage Grove, going east, right before you get to the viaduct? Is it
Ingleside?
Ingleside?
Maryland.
Maryland, I think it's Maryland.
It's a school that we adopted. We've had for like about 10 years now, where the brothers will go outside and encourage those kids that's coming in on the first day. We're there to show up. Whether we have a blue and white apparel on, but we go in as an encouragement and showing to go to school. Therefore, also that school has also been given, gifts and everything. Individual students have been given gifts as a incentive. You can say the word incentive, or you can imply incentive. But it's just one of our things of giving back as part of our our programs that we have within the fraternity. So there is some responsibility in the community on the south side. Now, is it like that on the north side? I don't know about whether, but it's for us, this is part of our initiative that we do, and especially, helping these kids go from where they at K through 8 to transfer over to high school, so they'll see, that there is somebody that does care regardless of that dollar amount that you were saying, or whether that parent is active or not, they have a fraternity that's there. That's helping. But it's a lot. It's hard to overcome a lot of systemic racism, especially now when you're having the Department of Education being closed down.
Yeah.
How is that even possible, y'all?
Yeah, that.
The Department of Education closing down.
Yeah.
So in other words,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and this decision was made
Yeah.
by who?
Yeah.
Some of the people who voted for the current president.
Yeah.
Yeah, see,
whether
that's a whole
in
nother-
our community or whether outside the community or whether outside in other communities who voted for him, who pulled the bait and switch move and everything. So now a new trickle down effect is about to happen, which it also parallel to what Reagan wanted to do in the 80s when we were children ourselves. I was a child in the 80s, right? You too?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
You also, right?
And so,
Yeah, we were children in the 80s. I remember during Reagan, from 80 to 88. I was like 6 years old in 80 to 88. Yeah, that was some hellified years. So in essence, he's redoing the same situation over again, trying to get rid of the Department of Education like Reagan did. So which putting it all on the states. Then you put up the stress on the states, especially if you have educational system that's in those red states are lower in reading and math and everything, because they keep attacking us in the blue cities, but they dumb as hell down there. They are. So I don't know if they're marching. I don't know if they're going to the first day of school or not themselves. The trailer trash. I wanted to say something else, but I'm trying to be cool.
we speak freely in here, though.
That's true. That's true. I don't know if the crackers doing the same thing down there. That I think they're doing the same thing. They're not going to school just as much as we might have a problem in inner cities or not.
The,
Go ahead.
the most frustrating part is that so many people are aware of what's happening, but there's no accountability. There is a dollar amount made on each child when they're in school, and now the child is not successful, so now the child is in somebody's detention center. There's a dollar amount put on the child's head in detention. So now the child goes to prison. That's another dollar amount. So is the focus to make black children specifically successful, or is it an ongoing slave trade?
Ongoing slave trade. But if our people don't know that, or if they're not listening to it, because a segment of our people are very ignorant. They're in their own.
It's a choice
world.
too. It's a choice to be. I had to say that part. Go ahead, I'm listening.
Are ignorant. And like they said, if you don't know they know what kind of trajectory you will have by the third grade, whether you know how to read, be in jail, or be dead, or whatever. Supposedly. I had a teacher tell me when I used to go to Robert A. Black. I had a teacher tell me I was going to be a rapper.
Was that a compliment to you at that time?
She was black. AKA she was ignorant herself. Looking back.
Right.
She was. I'm gonna be a rapper. That's when rapper was taking off back in '87.
Trying to look down on you.
That's just the way she was. But like I said, some of my people were deaf, dumb, and blind back then, even though they were educated themselves, according to and having degrees, from the white man's education. Right. And you got to understand the cycle repeats. So with that being said, it's like we have to utilize and take advantage of every opportunity within this educational system. The segment of the delegation that's ignorant, they have to be educated on such. They have to be educated on such so their child won't repeat that cycle of going, that vicious cycle of going to the Audi home over there on
Ogden.
on Ogden.
And you
Go ahead.
and just thinking back during the time, since it's Black History Month, y'all, during the time of slavery, we were forbidden to read. Do you know what happened when we were caught reading? So, in my mind, that is a ongoing condition that it's not. The focus is not to educate. The focus is to continue to break.
And to paint a happy picture to make it look like they're doing.
Wait, talking to Mike, sis.
And to paint a picture as if they're doing what they're supposed to do. Because we're educating the kids, we're giving them a good little schooling, you know? And it's the perception that they work so hard to maintain.
So
I got an episode I just did. I'm sorry,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Black. I just did an episode now a couple of weeks ago that we said instead of Bible study, Black History class. Yeah. You all check that out. Instead of Bible study, Black History class, because too much is
with
concentrated
that.
on Bible study week after week after week. We need to have Black History
Black
class.
history.
We need to have Black
Because
History because
it's
they
a
are
lot.
getting rid of the Black the history. They're getting rid of Black history, you know, all the time with this legislation and deregulation that they're doing. So we have to take, it's upon us as older members or becoming older members of the Black delegation. You too, as a young person of the Black delegation, because I don't think you're nowhere near 40 or 50 at all. Nowhere near that at all. But it's you know, it's upon you to break, because of what's going on, to let our younger people know about our history and about what we invented, what we created, the schools that we founded. You know, Fisk was founded by a Black man. Tuskegee also founded. The HBCUs was founded by, you know, different Black people and everything. You know what I'm saying? So we have to, you know, you have to teach these kids that, but those kids have to want to understand and want to learn. That's another problem, because they got to take down the fight videos.
Yeah, it's so unfortunate that when I do sometimes listen to my daughter's friends or just listen to some of the youth, we are the ones that seem to be pushing it, and whether or not they're ready to receive it or even want to receive it, that is a whole different question.
You mean the education part? We're pushing the education part.
We're pushing our history and teaching
Okay.
our children about our history. And some of them are just so far removed that they're just like, that was just the past. Like, we're not gonna, you know, like they're not open to receive that. And when Jamal said that I mean, I literally see that with this generation. It breaks my heart that they're like so far removed from the struggle, and they don't understand how impactful our history was and is today. And they don't even care to know about it. Like, old school traditional values is so lost with our generation, because all of us are not pushing that and preaching that to our children. A lot, and I hate to say this, a lot of our Black, and let me not even put a number or quantify it. I do know Black people that are so whitewashed that I know people within my own family who don't embrace who we are. They try to denounce who we are and what we've come from and just all of that, because maybe we have a little bit of financial freedom, if you will, or maybe we may not have had to struggle like our ancestors, and they feel like they are so far removed, like this won't happen to me. And that was that was hundreds of years ago, and I hate that concept. And it's just like, it's more and more of them that's being produced like that. It's more and more of them, and it's not all of them, but it's so many of them that it's just really disheartening. That's all I can say. It's really disheartening to think that they don't give a fuck about it.
I mean, I just want to understand that they do. Do they?
It's the want, whether or not you can.
You know,
I've been teaching my daughter who she is and what we represent, and I never sugarcoat it. I've never sugarcoated anything to her at a young age. I remember when she was 7, we were at Costco, and they had the entire Roots movie. It was on when DVDs were out, and I think it was like maybe 10 or 14. It was a whole pack
oh,
of
that's
DVDs.
a good price. I want
And
that.
but it was years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we were 7. She was 7. I will never forget. And I said to her, when you get a little bit older, we'll watch this. And I was explaining to her what it was about. She told me she wanted to watch it then. And we watched each of those DVDs. We sat down and we talked about all of it. I answered all of her questions. I explained everything to her, even at that young age, because that's where it starts. You have to start instilling it in them so that generationally they can carry that over. That's the same thing that they did in the movie Roots. They talked about it and they let each other know, and it continued on and continued on. If you don't start at home, that's why I said advocacy for your children and your children's, their future, it begins at home. We cannot rely, and this clearly shows what we're dealing with now. We cannot solely just rely on the educational system to educate our children.
So imagine 2 homeless people having a child. That child is homeless. Or imagine 2 people who are addicted to drugs. That child is going to be addicted to drugs. I'm just so confused about the children being left to suffer on their own. You know, if a child does not grow up in a healthy and stable environment, then that child is left to deal with surviving from learning from an unstable and dysfunctional environment. The child goes to school. The child doesn't understand what's going on in the classroom. The teacher doesn't say anything. The parent is a drug addict. So the parent doesn't know that the child, or doesn't really care. So the child is left to fend for themselves. You know, it's not all, but it's majority, because I get a lot. I talk to a lot of people, y'all. A lot of people, a lot of young people, a lot of youth who are suffering in silence, and no one really gives a damn. If I had enough room in my home, I would house them all, because it's not their fault. And to know that everything is about money, everything is about resources, everything is about if you have it or not, if you have the knowledge or if you don't have the knowledge. It's all about who you know, if you're going to get in some of the top schools. So it's difficult, and the only person that is suffering is the children. So I wanted MJ to speak on, you know how we all are into our own self-awareness, and we understand what is truth and what is not truth. And if we decide that we want to teach someone else, we will teach them the truth, right? So I want MJ to tell you about one of her experiences where I'll let her tell you, going into a job in New York as a teacher, but wanting to teach the way she wants to teach, but was told that she had to follow a teachable assignment. Come on.
Okay.
Come on. No, yo, come on, tell the story, girl.
When I was in college, my senior, because you gotta look for a new job, you gotta find something to do, you gotta hurry. Not to mention the college advisors are pressuring you to find after graduation plans. So something came across my lap. These people, I think their organization is known as Classical Charter Schools, and they are looking for people in my generation that they can send to school to get a master's in education and also paid to be a teacher. And so you're going to school and you're working at the same time. And as you're training to be a teacher, they're teaching you, well, this is what they're telling me in the interview. They said that the plan would be for me to be taught like about my body language in the classroom, how am I standing, how am I walking around the classroom, and they said that in terms of the curriculum, they would give me the curriculum, like there would be basically like a script that I would follow based on whatever class I would teach. Like I'm guessing if it was history class, it would tell me like what the semester layout was supposed to be and what I'm supposed to say in each class, because I guess their new idea of teaching was going to be like picking at everything to the smallest detail in order to improve the education of the students. But at the same time, that means that they would be controlling the teacher like a puppet, because you're controlling my body language and you're telling me how to stand and you're telling me how I'm supposed to greet the students and all of these things down to the little detail. And me as a person, I really value my creativity, and that's one reason why I would want to be a teacher, or wanted to be a teacher when I was a senior in college, is because I feel like I have creativity and can make lesson plans that are very interesting, and that's not something that I would have been able to do as a teacher with classical charter schools. So during the interview, I ended up telling the lady, no, actually, I completed the entire interview. I got the call back asking if I wanted the position, and I told them that I do not want the position because I do not like you all's way of doing things. I don't want to be controlled. And I was very worried, actually, after denying that, because like I said, I was a senior in college, and I'm like, I got to find a plan for after graduation. And I thought that that would have been a great one, but all money isn't good money, and it didn't align with my goals
And how-
for life. It didn't align with the way I thought that I would want to be if I were to be a teacher. So I thought that that would be pointless to do. And moving all the way to New York to do that, it's crazy. So
Yeah. When your morals are higher than the dollar amount.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Period.
And it was a message in there for me too. And the lady, when I declined the interview, declined the position, she was very, 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 very surprised, because she's like, why are you turning it down? Because I just told her, I remember I was walking to my car outside of my dorm hall, and I called them. I'm like, well, she called me, and I told them, like, no, I don't remember what I said word for word, but she was like, may I ask why? And then I told her, and she was like, oh, wow, it was just the way she said it, the connotation of the word she said to me gave that she was very disappointed or very surprised that I turned down the position, and I was kind of worried as well, like I said, and that's it.
And you might as well pick that mic up, because I do want you to tell us about your teaching experience in Germany and how it's different, from what you experienced here in school, and just what you see from the students now in school.
Oh, I thought you were going to say in the difference, like
Yeah,
in the
that.
classical charter school thing.
Yeah, you know what I'm trying to ask.
All three.
Yeah.
So I guess leading then from the same story I just told, then I declined that position, and what do you know, a better one came along, and I got offered another position to be a teacher, but in this one I would have more freedom to do what I want. I was still just a teacher's assistant, but even as a teacher's assistant, I was in the classroom alone and able to plan the lesson how I wanted. Maybe a little bit too much freedom, though. I complained about having strict rules, but then when I went to Germany, I had no rules at all. Like, it was like, they said, make a lesson on school. And I'm just like, where am I even supposed to start with that? Especially, I have no experience being a teacher. I just graduated college. I was a student for most of my life besides being a tutor. Exactly. That creativity came out, and I ended up making a lot of lessons, and the students ended up really, really enjoying the lessons. I taught English in Germany, and also alongside teaching English, I taught about culture, American culture, more specifically African American culture. So I found ways to incorporate that into my lessons, and that is something I really appreciated about my Fulbright experience, because if I were to work in the classical charter schools, that's not something that I would have been able to do, put whatever I want in my lesson and teach the students. So that was very nice. And what is your second question and the third question again?
You
What was the
comparing
second
it
question?
initially, you were comparing the experience in
Yes.
Germany to the charter school in New York,
Right.
and also to, I don't know what the third one was, but I just remember that was
So-
supposed to be a comparison.
Yeah, so as a teacher in Germany teaching the students, I know I hear a lot of people complain about the rebellious and the chaoticness
Oh, the students.
of the students here. Did you experience the
Oh.
same in Germany, or were those students more relaxed, welcoming to you? You know.
Yeah, it's both. The students were really welcoming to me. Well, the younger students were, just like in the USA, the older students are. They get that mindset, I'm too cool for school, man. I ain't trying to talk to no teacher. So the younger students were very impressed by me. They wanted to ask me all the questions, like this American girl, and I'm black. In Germany, all the students, majority of them are white. Maybe some of them are migrants and are like brown students, but no. Well, there was a couple black students, actually, maybe like 4 or 5 in the whole school, but that's not a lot. But the students are very chaotic and they're very rowdy, especially the young ones. They hop on the tables, they throw their coats around the classroom, book bags all around. That was a culture shock for me. I said, why are these students up hopping around like this? Why are their coats on the floor like this? Why are they eating in class? Why are they drinking in class? As an American coming from a noble school with all those rules and detention and all this stuff, I'm like, this is not how these students should be behaving. But, one thing about traveling is you have to understand the culture in order to understand why things are the way that they are. And given that Germany is already a stricter country, given because of their history and the things that they have done, they are looked at by the rest of the world as more strict. But when you go into their schools, you would think that was the USA, because they are not strict in their schools at all. They give their students the freedom to do what they want to do, to eat when they want to eat. In the USA, as a student, I could not eat when I wanted to eat. I could not even use the bathroom when I wanted to use the bathroom. And so it was just very interesting to me to see my students be able to act as adults and go to the bathroom when they wanted to go to the bathroom and come back. 6th graders, like 7th graders, I didn't do that in school. And so it was interesting as a teacher to have to find a new way to discipline or to get control of the classroom, because they have so much freedom, and I'm not used to that. They do still yell at the students. I think that one difference in the USA and Germany is the discipline system. Like in the USA, the teachers call the parents all the time, or they give detention. In Germany, it's not really like that. I think there's a different definition of bad, but I also think that that's rooted in racism in the USA. Like, black students are considered bad no matter what they do, being loud, but white students are loud too. Like, white students are loud and rowdy and disrespectful too. But when a black student does it, I feel like it comes across as even more disrespectful and even more aggressive to white people. And so I just feel like that's why maybe the strictness is different in the USA versus in Germany, because the German students are white and they come across as innocent and pure, versus in public schools in Chicago, where the teacher might be white and the black student being loud might come across as aggressive. So it just gets treated differently. So,
Valid points, very.
I just have a quick question
Man.
about the school system in Germany, or a couple of questions. You mentioned that, were you the only black staff teacher? Were you the only person that was on staff there that was black?
Yeah, there was another black student teacher, kind of, but she was a university student from nearby. She wasn't actually a teacher, but she was on the staff. So that felt nice, but there was no unity within the black. Yeah, it's not like that in Germany. They don't, like, that's just a really long story. Because of the history, like, in the USA, we know to stick together because how we're treated by people outside of our culture. In Germany, they don't stick together because they've never fought together. Like, they've never, so like, saying hello when you see a black person is not, that's what we do here.
Mhm.
There, they like, what are you speaking to me for? Just because you're like, I don't care. I don't care.
I one of the things that you touched on was about the racism in our schools here, where they have to gain control, so to speak. And yes, because historically, Americans and white Americans always felt that they had to have control. So that whole mindset has been trickled down into, so I could see that being a thing that's only centered towards the United States, because yes, racism is so heavily focused here. And even though there's racism in other states, I mean other countries, I still feel that it all stemmed from us here. I also had just one last question about the school system in Germany. Is their school system, well, two questions. Is their school system kind of like ours, where it's like a K through 8, and then it's a high school afterwards? And then what is their school structure like? You know how our schools are overcrowded and overpopulated, and it's a certain schools based upon different districts. Is it kind of set up like that in Germany as well?
Oh, that's so funny. I like this question because that's an issue in Germany. They separate their schools based on merit, kind of. So their schools, like, to put it in, like, this is not what I'd say in a paper, but they have schools for the students that they classify as, like, dumber or slower than other students, and then they have the gymnasium, which is the school that I taught English at, where the students are high performing, or white German students who come from wealthy families. So that's not so different from the USA, because we have schools that are like that too, that are reserved for the wealthy, but it's not based on all their smarts too, though. It's also based on money here, specifically in the USA. But in Germany too, their schools are segregated. So with that in mind, they have schools where all the migrants go to, like, and that's Gemeinsamschule, like the school. I guess you maybe say that's just comparable to our public school. Like, they send all the students there that they don't really think are gonna go to college, because if you don't go to a gymnasium in Germany, you can't do your A levels. And A levels is the level you need to reach in order to apply to college in Germany. Just like you have to take the SAT and ACT here to go to college, they have to do their A levels. And A levels is only something you can do if you go to a specific school. So basically, if you go to Gemeinsamschule, they're setting you up to automatically go to vocational school or trade school because you are not smart enough to go to college. But you have parents that advocate for their students, just like they have to do here. And if you are a parent that advocates for your student, and you can tell the teacher, I do not agree with your assessment of my student. I want my student to go to a gymnasium school. You said my student has to go to Gemeinsamschule. I want them here. So if you have a parent that really stands up for your student, maybe you can change that and get them into gymnasium, and that can really change their future, for real. So I guess it's different in that they have different names and stuff like that, but it's also the same in that it's structured in a way that only some will succeed. It's not for everyone to succeed. They don't have the resources to teach the students this. Like, each student needs to learn a different way, like we already discussed, and I feel like the students that they're classifying as not good enough to go to college just needed more time or
to learn in a different way.
Yeah, exactly. So that's not something I really like about the German school system, and a lot of people are aware of that. Like, a lot of people also agree with that, and I don't know what they're gonna do about that though. But yeah, and they also have the 13th grade. It's not 12th grade; it's a 13th grade. Yeah, and they finish, but they're still the same age though. They still end up being 18 and 17 when they graduate high school. Even with the 13th grade.
Hey, y'all. So this about wraps up, unless you all have anything else on the education and the system subject.
Education in the system.
That was the topic. But first, before I leave, I just want to, I know some amazing Chicago public school teachers, or educational instructors. How about that? Amy Ann Bogan, class of 91, Dorlise Little, Michael Muhammad. I'm pretty sure I know a lot more, but that's all I got at the top of my head, and I just want you all to know that you are amazing, and I appreciate your work with the students, the energy, the concern, and the compassion, because they need it. I want to thank my guests for their thoughts, their advice, their wisdom. It's been an amazing conversation. And this is Lucid Conversations, ending this